Welcome to Project Management course. Today, Scope Management. These are the topics for today. Understand the importance of good project scope management, and you should be able to describe the process of planning scope management. You should be able to discuss methods for collecting and documenting requirements to meet stakeholder needs and expectations, and to explain the scope definition process and describe the contents of a project scope management. Furthermore, in the end, be able to discuss the process for creating a work breakdown structure using the analogy top-down, bottom-up, and mind mapping approaches. Scope management, what is it all about? Important to know is what is in and what is out. What do you have to deliver and what do you don't have to deliver? What do you have to create? What you don't have to create in your project? If you know what to do and what not to do, then you need to plan how to do this, how to create all the how-to plans which are necessary to manage your project. So what is your process? How are you going to manage your scope? What is scope management? Scope refers to all the work involved in creating the products of the project and the processes used to create them. By doing all the work, something comes out, which is the deliverable. This is a product or a service. So this product is produced as part of the project. Can be hardware, software, all the planning documents, meeting minutes, or everything you create while doing the work. And then what is now project scope management? This is a process. So in project scope management, this includes the processes which are involved in defining and controlling what is or what is not included in a project. So this is about the process. How does the process of project scope management looks like? We are sticked a bit to PMI in this course, and we will also refer to Prince2 from time to time to show some differences. But mainly, I want to show you the process of PMI of scope management. The first step is the first process, planning. So plan the scope. And here you want to determine how the project scope and the requirements will be managed. So it's about how to manage that. The next step is collecting the requirements. So defining and documenting the features and all the functions of the products produced during the project, as well as the processes which are used for creating them. Get all the requirements, how to create, how to collect these requirements. Defining the scope. Things like reviewing the project charter and all the requirements documents that needs to be done. Have a look at all the organizational process assets which are already there. Make use of templates which are available in your company. And use all this to create a so-called scope statement document. The next step is in the process creating the work breakdown structure. What you do here is you subdivide all the major project deliverables into smaller and more manageable components. So divide and conquer is the key here. So make small deliverables which are actually manageable. Next one is validating the scope. So this is also part of scope management. This is actually about the formalizing acceptance of all the project deliverables. And the last point is controlling scope. So control all the changes to this project scope which can occur during the life of the project. So if something changes regarding the scope is increased, so new requirements pop up, there are some issues which occur, which have influence on the scope, you need to control that, you need to manage that. Let's start with plan scope management process. So planning the scope management is actually the question, how are you going to do that? So by creating a scope management plan. How can you do the scope management planning? If you want to plan your scope, you are not doing it alone as a project manager. You need experts for that. So you need judgment from the experts, and you do this during the meetings. You do this together with your project management team, with your team. Maybe you have a core team already with developers in an IT project. You do this together with several experts, with the customer. So all the people, all the stakeholders which have some influence on the scope. And if you did that, the scope management plan comes out, and also the requirements management plan. The scope management plan is a subsidiary part of the project management plan. So the project management plan holds all the management plans, scope management plan, cost management plan, schedule or time management plan, quality management plan, risk management plan. So this is all part of the project management plan. What is in this scope management plan? Again, I mentioned this earlier. These management plans are how-to plans. So it's about the question how to prepare a detailed project scope statement. Also, you describe how to create a work breakdown structure. So for example, how will it be stored? Where will it be stored? Will it be versioned? How will it be versioned? Which tools are you using to create or to change it? How it is managed if changes in the scope occur. Also describe how to maintain and improve the work breakdown structure, how to obtain formal acceptance of the completed project and deliverables. What about changes to your project? So how to control the request for changes regarding scope. This needs to be described in the project scope management plan. PM book describes requirements as conditions or capabilities that must be met by the project or present in the product, service, or result to satisfy an agreement or other formally imposed specification. So the requirements management plan documents how project requirements will be analyzed, documented, and managed. The next process in scope management is collect requirements. How to collect the requirements? So for some IT project, it is helpful to divide requirements development into categories called elicitation, analysis, specification, validation, and so forth. And here it is important to use an iterative approach to defining requirements since they are often unclear early in the project. Start collecting the requirements. You may not have all the requirements in the beginning, are unclear or not complete. So by iterating, you get more and more to all the requirements and get more details on that. What are the methods for collecting the requirements? Interviewing. So interviews with customers and stakeholders. So those who are probably involved in the service or product you create or delivered. You create focus groups or facilitated workshops. So for specific topics, it is helpful to have workshops. People who are responsible for a specific domain or are experts should be involved in these workshops. Use creativity and decision-making techniques in groups. So depending on the projects, could be necessary to use these creativity techniques. For example, totally new products or services are planned. Use questionnaires and surveys. So by doing that, the project team can collect data which can help for collecting requirements, and this is usually for large user groups. Do observations and document analysis on all the documents you have. You can use prototyping, for example, a GUI prototype. Benchmarking, comparing specific project practices or characteristics. Compare them with other projects or products inside or outside the performing organization. Next step, defining the scope. How are you doing that? Well, you do this by creating a project scope statement. And these project scope statements should include at least a product description, a product user acceptance criteria, and detailed information on all the product deliverables. Additionally, it should include documents with other scope-related information, project boundaries, constraints, assumptions. The project scope statement should also reference all the supporting documents, such as product specifications. And as the time progresses, the scope of the project should become more clear and specific. Let's have a look at an example project scope statement template from PMI, and you see all the points coming back here: the project scope description, the deliverables, the acceptance criteria defined, some project exclusions, the constraints, and some assumptions over there. If you have this project scope statement, then creating the work breakdown structure is the next point. So you know now what is about the scope, what is in and what is out. Have some work packages. And this is the idea how to do this, creating the work breakdown structure. The work breakdown structure is a deliverable-oriented grouping of the work. In your project, the work breakdown structure defines the total scope of the project, so all your work items you have. Like the name said, you break it down. The work breakdown structure is a foundation document that provides the basis for planning and managing project schedules, costs, resources, and changes. And it's decomposed, so the decomposition is subdividing the project deliverables into smaller pieces, right? So you have your work items and you decompose all this work you have to do in smaller pieces as far as you can and as early as you can. You define in your work breakdown structure all the tasks and work packages for completing the deliverables. And the scope baseline then includes the approved project scope statement and its associated work breakdown structure and the work breakdown dictionary. So this is what you call the scope baseline. After you finished your work for creating the work breakdown structure, the work breakdown dictionary, and the scope statement, you have a starting point, which is your scope baseline for your project. Yes, it can change later on in the project, but first of all, this is your start, and you measure against your scope baseline during your project. Let's have a look. Sample intranet work breakdown structure. You see at the top, this is a name of the project, and then you have the several levels of the work breakdown structure as broken down: the website design, the homepage design, marketing pages, and sales pages. And then you have in the second level sitemap, graphics design programs, under website design, text, images, hyperlinks. So you break the work down. Another view, intranet work breakdown structure, which is organized by phases. So you can organize it by the type of work or by phases. This is a choice you have to make as project manager. You see the level 1, the name of the project. Level 2, you have the first level items: concept, website design, website development, rollout, and support, which are then the phases in this case. Level 3, you see broken down into work, evaluate current systems, define requirements, and so forth. And the requirements definition, it's even more broken down into define user requirements, define content requirements, define system requirements, and define server owner requirements. Here another work breakdown structure created with another tool. This is more for software developers which are experienced with programming tools. You see that with your code, which you can type down, you can create a work breakdown structure, same view, different tool. And here you see a so-called Gantt chart. And for example, in Microsoft Project, which is a well-known software from Microsoft, you can use other ones. On the left side, you see a work breakdown structure, and on the right side, you see the schedule, which is part of schedule management or also called time management. So this Gantt chart usually is a combined view of a work breakdown structure and a schedule. So if you talk about a work breakdown structure, it is only about the work packages broken down into work pieces. And if you add a schedule to that, this is usually both a work breakdown structure and a schedule. And these Gantt charts are usually work breakdown structures and schedule together. So here another view organized by project management process group. This is also what you can do. You see now the PMI process groups: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, closing. So here you have also the project manager work in your planning. By the way, this is a good idea to add also your project management work into your work breakdown structure and schedule, because this is also work. What are the approaches to develop the work breakdown structures? Use guidelines. Some organizations provide guidelines for preparing work breakdown structures. Or you can use the analogy approach. Have a look at work breakdown structures of similar projects and tailor your project. You can use a top-down approach. So start with the largest item of the project, so on top, so naming the project name, and then break it down. Or you have a bottom-up approach. Start with specific tasks and roll them up. Another approach is, and I like that a lot, is a mind mapping approach. So use a mind mapping for creating these branches and get out from a core idea and then structure everything, structure your thoughts and ideas, and then create from there a work breakdown structure. This can usually nicely be done with mind mapping tools. Work breakdown structure dictionary and scope baseline. So many work breakdown structures tasks are pretty vague and must be explained more so that people know what to do and that they can estimate how long it will take and what it will cost to do the work. In the scope baseline, you have usually the work breakdown dictionary in there. We mentioned this earlier. It describes in a detailed way all the information you need for this specific work breakdown structure item. Some hints for creating the work breakdown structure and the work breakdown structure dictionary. A unit of work should only be in one place in the work breakdown structure. Don't have multiple work breakdown structure items which have the same name, so the same work popping up multiple times. The work content of a work breakdown structure item is the sum of all the WBS items below it. So this allows better cost estimates. So you can sum up the costs for upper items. So they belong to upper items. A work breakdown structure item, there should be only one person responsible for one work breakdown structure item. So this is the person who's responsible, and this is the person you should ask. And the work breakdown structure must be consistent with the way in which work is actually going to be performed. If you create the work breakdown structure, involve project team members in developing that. And this is important to ensure consistency. And of course, to ensure buy-in. Each work breakdown structure item must be documented in a work breakdown structure dictionary. So to ensure that this is accurate and that everybody can understand the scope of work which is included and which is not included in that item. The work breakdown structure should be flexible. This should be really a flexible tool because changes in your project will occur. That's for sure. It should be easy to change the work breakdown structure. That should be flexible. And this is also important for getting the overview and to control the work of your project according to the scope statement. Let's sum it up. Project scope management is about defining generally what is in and what is out of the scope. And you describe how you want to do it. So the description to the planning is actually how are you going to do that? And the work breakdown structure is actually a tool for you as a project manager. So you define your scope management plan content in meetings. So all the stuff you put into scope management plan, this is what you do in meetings and not alone together with your team and stakeholders. And think good who should participate and how the approval of the work breakdown structure works and so forth. Keep in mind that not all steps are feasible for all projects. PMI usually thinks of huge projects, usually when they're defining the scope is not something which can be done in one or two meetings. When all these steps needs to be followed, this is usually a huge project which is into place. So this was scope management. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.